Have you been scouring the internet looking for your perfect dream home? Have you finally been out in the trenches and house hunted and found the one? And now you're nervous about how to write an offer, how to craft an offer, what do you put in it, how do you get it to be looked at favorably, how do you not be offensive while still getting a good deal? Those are good questions that every single buyer has. And today I'd like to talk to you about what I think are the top 5 things that you should consider when writing an offer for a home to try and get the best deal as possible while making it be a relatively smooth process for all parties involved. Okay, so you're ready to take that next big step into writing the offer for the home of your dreams. It can be really intimidating, and if you haven't done it before, or even if you have done it before, most people aren't buying houses on the daily, weekly, monthly, even yearly. People are probably buying houses maybe once every 5 or 10 years, and so I'm just going to go over some tips on hopefully how to make the process easier for you, how to make you feel more confident, and how to feel secure, and that the offer you're putting together is your very best. So let's see. First, I'm just going to assume that you have made the very wise decision and hired a local real estate professional. Markets vary greatly, even within the same province. If you're purchasing a home in Calgary versus Edmonton versus Fort McMurray, just because you hear something on the news about what the general real estate market is doing, every market that you are in is very specific and very niche. So you're going to want to have a local real estate agent who is really on the ground, in the trenches, understanding the market, understanding the trends, and understanding what is going on where you want to buy a house. That is, of course, first and foremost. I'm not even going to put that as a point. Have a real estate agent. Number 1 is understanding the market. That to me is incredibly important for all of my buyers to realize and to understand what is going on. And what do I mean about understanding the market? I don't just mean what you hear on the news as regurgitated, generalized information. What I like to talk to my buyers about is very specific. For example, what is the average days on market? Let's talk about your specific property that you love. How long has it been listed? How many price decreases has it had, if any? How many similar homes have sold and what are they selling for? So you're always going to want to do a comparative market analysis to the house that you want to purchase. Your realtor should be going back, should be pulling comparables. And when you're pulling comparables, you're looking to make these houses as similar as possible. So you're looking for the same location, similar style, similar size, similar year built. I often only compare apples to apples. So I really try not to compare a 2-story house to a bungalow. There's just differences in them. So you're going to want to sit down and really understand what has actually been selling. Not what's active on the market right now, not what people say they bought a house for 5 years ago. So you're really going to want to understand recent sales. I don't even look at anything else. If it's past 6 months, I don't look at it because the market is so dynamic and changes so quickly. We're looking at current information. What has a willing seller and a willing buyer been able to come together and make a deal and sell a property for? Those are the numbers that I want, and that's the information I want to give my buyer, along with things like what is the average discount? Those are all stats that we can pull that will be really important when we are crafting our offer. So again, point number 1, market research. Very important. I'm going to get down into the nitty-gritty a little bit sooner here, but my point number 2 is going to be very open with your pre-approval. I'm not saying to give them your pre-approval amount. I'm just saying that you want to let them know that you are pre-approved, you're in good financial standing. Your realtor will often craft that in an email along with your offer to explain. Sometimes, although you don't want to give people too much information, there is a part in our contract where we put our down payment amount. If you have a really healthy down payment, if you're putting 20% down, if you're putting anything down more than the bare minimum, you're obviously going to want your sellers to know that and understand your financial stability, because if perhaps you are going in with a slightly lower offer, it gives sellers a lot more confidence if your financial position is stronger, because offers fall apart every single day because of financing. Every day, all the time. If you can be open with letting them know that you're pre-approved, with letting them know your down payment amount, and even with, if you can, putting a higher deposit with that offer, that all shows really strong financial security which is really helpful to a seller. My next point in writing a good offer is if you have the ability to be flexible with your possession. If I'm writing an offer with my buyers, I ask them, in a perfect world, what is your perfect scenario? What's your perfect price? What's your perfect move-in date? And then I let them know, obviously, flexibility is important. If your sellers need a really quick possession, if they need a really long possession, these are things we're going to want to know and hopefully find out ahead of time, because if possible, we're going to want to work with them on possession as a point, maybe rather than price. If price is really important to you, maybe there's some other things that we can do to make the offer feel a bit more inclusive of the sellers. Point number 4, I like people to consider not being overly aggressive in their inclusions. Typically, when a house is for sale, you'll see online that there's certain things included with the property. Here in Alberta, I think in the US this is different, but we almost always include our appliances. So when you're looking at a house, you're going to be like fridge, stove, dishwasher, washer, dryer, it's all there. Oftentimes, especially in our market, there are sellers willing to leave a few other things behind. Sometimes I have had to caution buyers that maybe get like a little too overzealous in requesting everything from sofas and beds to dressers to just a lot of different things. My favorite words when I'm with buyers writing an offer is being fair, being reasonable. So if we're going to ask for the lowest price, if we're going to ask for all of their furniture included with the fastest possession possible, we have to know that there's going to be some concessions. And so usually I like to tell people, you need to think of your deal breakers and be flexible on everything else. My point number 5, I think that this is actually something very unique to Fort McMurray. So I'm putting it in here because I'm thinking that anybody watching these videos will probably be buying a house in Fort McMurray, I'm assuming. Our Fort McMurray market was on a real hard downward trend, probably for at least the last 7 years. So something else that I specifically do in my specific neighborhood, of course, is I pull title on any property that my buyer wants to purchase. And I'm going to check the history on that house and see when was that house last sold for? What did those sellers pay for that house? How long have they owned it? And what does it look like their last registered mortgage on title was? Because a big problem that we've been running into, specifically in Fort McMurray, is that some sellers cannot afford to sell their house for market value just because they have lost so much equity in the last 7 years. And that is incredibly depressing, but that is a very factual thing. Sometimes if I get a feeling like there's a house that's listed, we love it, it's potentially overpriced according to the market. If I pull that title and I see they bought that house 6 years ago for $150,000 more than what they're selling it for, they are probably selling at a loss. And that is a really big thing to consider in our market, because sometimes sellers just cannot sell for the price that maybe is your bottom line price. So I always tell people we want to be as informed as possible going into this situation. And we also don't want to fully fall in love with this house yet, because we don't want to overpay for a property. And if a seller can't afford to sell that house for market value or for what we are willing to pay for it, we don't want to be brokenhearted and make a bad decision and overpay for a property. I never ever want anyone to come to me 5 years later and be like, hey, Leah, it's time to sell my house. And I'll be like, well, we overpaid by $40,000, so we're not getting that back. Don't want to be the person that says that. Point number 5 was just obviously being educated on that specific property's history. You want to be educated on the market, and you also want to be educated on that property. So in conclusion, when the time comes for you to write that very scary but very exciting offer on your dream home, things you need to consider are doing your market research, really understanding what's happening in your market currently right now, being very open with your pre-approval, your deposit, what kind of good financial standing you're in, if you have a really healthy down payment. I think those are really important things to share with the seller, because if you're going in with a slightly lower offer, having a good financial footing might be helpful. You want to also be flexible with closing dates and possession, and you also want to understand the history of the actual property. Given the economy in Fort McMurray for the last 7 years, many sellers are selling at a loss, and you really want to understand not only the market, but that specific home. So there you have it. Buying a house is not that scary, but it can feel really intense when you're in the thick of it. Just rest assured that if you have chosen the right professional and somebody that you trust, they're here to inform you and guide you and help you make the best decision possible. So those are a few little things I think you need to consider before writing your offer. I think you need to have an open mind. You need to have a slightly closed heart until you get the accepted offer. Don't fall in love too fast. But I hope that that sort of helps you a little bit in crafting a good offer and in understanding the way that this whole process works. Thank you very much. I hope that makes sense, and have a lovely day.